What's the deal, everybody? Welcome back to Shooting on Location. Today, we're gonna be doing a 360 tour, linking up the Insta360 One RS 1-inch 360 edition to KUULA, the platform for delivering 360 tours, and I link it up with Ario. Now, let me start off by saying, once again, this camera was sent to me by Insta360. They do not have any say-so over my video, and all of these thoughts and processes are those of my own. Just thought I would throw that out there before we start. All right, I know it's a beautiful, foggy, chilly day to be doing this, but either way, the information's got to get out there. So I already said what camera I'm going to be using. To do the whole thing, I'm actually going to be using the selfie stick that comes along with it and the handle that folds out into a tripod leg. I personally believe that this is the perfect size for the interior shots. Now, sometimes for the exteriors, you might want it to be a little bit higher, but overall, in general, I found this very useful. And a little tip no one told me about that I just recently found out, these legs actually slide out. So they can give you a little bit of extra extension and stability if you need them. Now, before we start, obviously, we're gonna have to take off this screen cover, lens cover. There's the word I'm looking for, lens cover. Take that off, and I'm gonna actually start the screen record process once I get more to the interior. For the exterior, it can be a little wacky because I'm dealing with trying to get this thing level. Now, one thing to keep in mind whenever you're doing these photos, especially for exteriors, is that this camera actually has like a horizon level built in, so it doesn't matter which way the camera is facing or tilting, it always has a steady, solid horizon line. So if your camera is sitting off a little bit one way or the other, don't fret it too much, especially for the exteriors, because like I said, they're all gonna be level when you get them back into post-production. For post-production for these, we're gonna go with the Insta360 software, move into Lightroom, and then bring it into Kula. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move my truck out the background. Then I'm gonna take all these 360 shots out here. Then I will move on to the inside, so I will catch you in there. All right, now actually, before we step into the house, I'm gonna give you a few little tips and tricks because this place is completely vacant, and just like my last tutorial, I don't want you to have to deal with that super echoey interior from the mic. So I'll just tell you what I need to tell you out here, and then I'll transfer over to studio or office screen capture while I talk over the time lapse that I'll make while I'm in there of the process. So a few tips to start with is, number one, if you are using an Android phone or maybe an iPhone and you have a VPN built into it or using a VPN, you have to turn off the VPN to connect to the camera. Learn this the hard way. Turn it off in advance and the connection process will be super easy. Now, the mode I will be using to create these images is the HDR photo mode. And just like when it comes to my video walkthrough, believe it or not, I'm gonna leave this thing in basically full auto mode. It's very rare that I have to change it, and it's usually only in those super dark situations that I was talking about in all of my other videos, or any of the comments coming down asking why I'm using this camera in particular and why I prefer it to the others. Those low light rooms, this thing really shines, and the auto exposure settings and the way it handles images is really, really top notch. So now that we've got those tips out of the way, let's convert on over to the studio while you watch the time lapse of me getting this done. All right, here we are back in the office, and while that's playing over there, I'm gonna go ahead and give you a few little tips and tricks along the way. Now, whenever you place the camera, you would naturally want to do so in the center of the room since it's a 360 view and you want people to look all around. But from my experience, most people are viewing these on a computer or on a cell phone, and they're using the scroll wheel option. So I actually find it better to take the whole unit and place it into the corner as though I'm doing the same thing with my film camera. Now, the only difference is the film camera, I get as close to the wall as possible. With the 360 cam, I try and stay about 3 foot away from the wall, so 3 foot on each corner. Or if you're doing it as you enter a room, where the door swings open, kind of the fulcrum, the center point of where the door is, if you put your tripod right on the outside of that, I find that to be a really good space for doing interiors. Now, I did say that I keep the camera on full auto mode when I do that, and this is true, but I do change a few settings beforehand, and you can see all of those settings over there. Oop. Tap, tap. Do you hear that? My bad. So check out those settings. You can see those. And what I'm going to do first is, if you notice, I keep my camera set on overexposed by 1 when I'm photographing, and I'm doing a 9 auto bracket. You can go as low as 3 or as high as 9. What I'm going to do right now is pull up on my screen and show you kind of the difference between 3 to 9 and what the real difference is. So I'll pull up Lightroom where I have these. I'll make it full screen for us. Now we've got, this is an HDR 3-stop, and these are directly out of the Insta360 cam with no editing yet. So a 3-stop DNG. This is a 9-stop DNG. That's the difference in the two. If you can tell, really in this area, you can tell a lot of difference over here, and in particular, look right over here is where you can see the biggest difference. 3, 9. So now I actually did examples. So this is a 3-stop HDR bracket. This is a 5-stop HDR bracket. This is a 7-stop HDR bracket. And this is a 9-stop HDR bracket. Now there are advantages and disadvantages to using each of these. 3 takes the least amount of time, but as you can tell, holds the least amount of details in shadows and lights. 9, in retrospect, takes the most amount of time, but also holds the most amount of details. I choose 9 because the difference on site is between like 30 seconds to a minute for each photo taken. It takes about a minute to do a 9-stop HDR bracket, have them all combined, and be able to go on to the next shot. To do the 3-stop HDR bracket, which is this one, that's more of like a 30-second on-site time between taking image and going on to the next one. So you have to decide what's more important to you, the amount of time spent on site or the quality of the image it produces. Personally, I prefer to reduce my post-production time and spend a little extra time on site, so that's the way I do it. So let me go ahead and reduce this, since this is just my basic Lightroom. Get on out of here. What we're going to do now is we're going to import these photos, and if you can see right here, I'll put it right in front of my face. I actually just have my Insta360 plugged directly into my computer. I'm not going to pull these off of the Insta360 and put them on my computer first. I'm going to pull them directly from the camera. Now, if I open this up, this is my file folder. This is everything that's on there right now. And as you can see, it took a single DNG for every bracketed shot. So there are a lot of shots, even though I think I took 26, maybe 27 on site, something like that. But you can see there's way more than that here. There's 231. So there you go. Divide that by 9 and you'll probably have the number of images I took. You'll notice it also provides 2 different things. It provides a DNG image and a JPEG, or an Insta360 photo image as they call it. And it basically does the same thing, except for one's JPEG and one's a DNG RAW. I personally prefer to work off the DNG files because it gives me greater leverage when I do post-production in Lightroom. But if you're someone who is not going to bring it into the Lightroom and just going to post directly from the Insta360 software, I recommend doing the JPEG method. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go open up my Insta360 app right here. I'm going to take all of my DNG files that I have right here, select them all, and I'm just going to drag them into here. And it's going to take these 231 images and compile the ones that go together to create unique images over here on the side. And as soon as this is done loading up, we'll move on to that next step. All right, look at that, loaded up all the way. And as you can see, when you see our first image, it's generating the HDR right now of the images, and down here below are the 9 stops it took. Now you'll notice when this first pops up, as I mentioned earlier and showed you on the screen, I do an overexposure of 1 for all of my real estate related stuff because the shadows are the most important for me. If you're going direct processing, you're not going to do any post-production. You're just going to go from the Insta360 software onto whatever your site is, and you're not going to pull it through Lightroom. I would recommend leaving that at 0 and not 1 overexposure. But since I'm doing post-production personally, I do the 1 exposure over. So as you can see, if we go through, it'll take all of these 9 images and slowly build up these HDR sites. But we don't really have to mess with all this. And this is the beauty of the Insta360 software program, is that it generates its own pure shot HDR and creates a look that we need. Now, the first thing I know is that I did a couple shots more than once, so I'm going to come down here and just remove those, because this is the 3, the 5, the 7, and there is the 9 bracket. So I'm going to remove those because I know I don't need them from this export. And I know for a fact I accidentally took one extra exterior front. So I'm going to remove that one, and that should leave me with like 26 images, something like that. All right, so we have them all selected. We're gonna move over to the export button over here, except for we're actually not, and let me show you why. When you press the export button, it doesn't actually give you as many options as it does when you do them individually, and we want the individual options here, and I'll show you why. So instead of doing them all together, we're going to select one at a time and export, because what we want is to change this from merge photo JPEG to merge photo DNG. That's what we want right there, and I am going to change this one. I'm just going to call it one. Actually, you know what? You don't even have to change this. You can leave it. I'm going to cancel this out, go back over here, and I'm going to leave it just as it is. As the DNG, I'll leave the name title. It doesn't really matter. Press the export button and you will see it pops up right here. If I open it up, it will open up in Photoshop as a DNG. Boom, there we go. And it doesn't have any of the automatic post-production that is done to the image directly out of the Insta360 app, but it does have the photo merge done to it, and that's the important part. So now we have the one done. Let's go through and we're just gonna do the same thing for all of them. So this takes a little bit more time, but trust me, in the end, it's worth it because you get a much higher quality product. Now, what I'm gonna do is just go down the list and export every single one of these things in the DNG mode, just so that way I get it done in the best looking way possible, and these images are the best. So I'm gonna go through this process. It'll take me just a couple minutes because, as you can see, I only have a certain amount of photos, and once I'm done, I will pick right back up. All right, and we're back. Now I've taken all of those exported images, I have brought them into Lightroom, and now it's time to start working on them. So as you can see, here we are in Lightroom. I have all the images selected. I'm gonna go to my Develop tab, and I'm gonna come over here to, let me see this. Let me scoot this over, actually. Just like that, because I want you to be able to see these levels over here, and sometimes you can't really see them with a screen recording, so hopefully you can right now. I'm going to come over here to one of my presets that I've already created for the Insta360, and boom, what I'm going to do is sync all of these. Now, this preset that I've made is actually for the interiors and not the exteriors, so you can see what it does on the interiors. It makes them look really great. Exteriors, it makes them a little bit overexposed, so we're just going to bring this down. There we go. I'm going to select this and I'm going to sync that setting to just the exteriors and come through each one and just slightly adjust them. Now, exteriors and interiors I treat a little bit differently. Interiors, I decrease saturation. Exteriors, I increase saturation. So we want to increase the saturation and vibrance a little bit on the outside. Like you can see all of my settings over here of how I have it set up. I'm going to come down to my tone curve, and I'm actually going to pump up these shadows a little bit. Not that much, just a little bit. And I'm going to bring back down the darks. There we go. And now I'm going to sync this to all of my exteriors. Let's go check them all out real quick. There we go. There we go. This one's a little bit bright, so let's bring down those highlights and bring down the darks just a little bit so it matches the other ones. And that one looked crazy with that setting, so let us go. Bring the exposure down, bring the highlights down, just like before. There we go. And those are all the exteriors. Onto the interiors, you can see exactly what it looks like. We can go before. This is straight out of the camera as a basic HDR merge with none of the, what do they call it? Pro shot or pure shot. That's what they call it. None of the pure shot. This is with the additional edit in Lightroom. Very basic, very simple edit. Now let me show you a trick. I picked this house in particular because it is long and very dark in the center, so it gives me some good chances to do a little bit of adjusting. Pull out my brush right over here, and you can see all my brush settings right here. Actually, let me move this back over. There we go. Now you can see all my brush settings again right over here, and I'm just gonna paint in a little bit of the shadowy area up here, right here, And once again, this is not something you need to feel like you have to do. This is just a way to take your photos up one extra little notch. There we go. We'll go on to the next one because I like to go through and make sure not only that everything looks as good and nice as possible, but also that all the color temperatures are even. So I end up doing a nice little run through before I actually post everything. And look how clean and white that makes the ceiling with just a little tiny bit of effort. Just going from picture to picture, increasing that exposure just a little bit in those dark areas, which once again, you definitely do not have to do this step. The photo looks fine on its own, but this is how I take it to the next level, if you will. And I always press L instead of K. I do this all the time when pressing my little key sets. In case you didn't know, L in Lightroom will bring you to the Lightroom thing that you just saw where it puts darkness around the edges, and K is how you quick access your brush, and that's what I'm using in between all of these. I'm just pressing K so that way I can add in a little bit here and there. Another thing I really like to do with this camera in particular, and you'll notice when I get to the bedroom, is I like to put it in a place where you can see the lens flare, because this camera can actually handle that. Most cameras cannot necessarily handle that. So here we go. This one actually looks pretty fine, but I'll add just a little bit. There we go. That one looks fine. Like I said, usually it's just in those big areas I end up having to do it. I always look in the bedrooms to check the color tone and color temperature, because depending on where you are in the house, it can change the color temperature by how much light is coming in from the outside. So this one is just a tiny bit greener than the rest. So I'm just gonna remove a tiny bit of that green, and as you can see, that sun flare coming through the window. I love the way it looks on these tours, and so far all the agents do also. That one looks fine. This one looks fine. This is the one, like I said, these smaller rooms, you rarely have to do it. This one I have to though, because look how it can see all the way into here, but it was mainly adjusting for in here. So let's go ahead and we'll lighten up all of this. Ooh, I wonder if that's shaking the camera, because I'm shaking everything. And this room turned out a little bit yellow, so we'll just add a little bit of blue. There we go. This one turned out a little bit blue because it's got a whole bunch of what I would call shade light coming in through this window right there, and there's a huge tree next to it. But once you brighten it up a little bit in all of these shadowy areas, it removes a lot of that. There we go. And we got 2 pictures left. Here we go. This one we're just going to bring up the exposure of the whole image a little bit. There we go. Pull in a little more contrast, and you can see the shadow of the stick right there, so you could also remove that if you really want to. We could. There we go, and it will automatically adjust, and the stick shadow has been removed. Into the garage, once again, this is a simple space. Add that a little bit, come in, lighten up. If you haven't noticed, really the area I lighten up the most is the ceiling, because that's the area you can notice it the most in 360 tours. All right, now before we continue on, I'm going to show you one more little trick, and that is whenever you are doing these tours, you're bound to experience mirrors. And this is where things can get tricky, because you can either leave this in here, which most agents don't care about at all because that's just how it rolls, or you can take the step further and remove them. Now, whenever I'm on site, notice how I made sure when lining up this site to put this in an area that's pretty plain and basic. And that allows me to take a basic healing tool right here in Lightroom, make it nice and tiny, and I should be able to just remove this entire thing with one click. There we go, just like that. Oh, you can see a little bit at the top, so we'll come redo just the top part, and there we go, just like that. We've gotten rid of the camera. Let's go on to the next bathroom, which is this one. Oh, I forgot I did this one twice, because you can see this one went out during the shot for some reason. So let me actually just remove this photo. I don't need this at all. Yes. There we go. Now let's do this again so you can see me do it twice. Here we go. And just like that, just like before, super simple remove, and now you don't have it there. Next bathroom, like before, this one was a little bit trickier because as you can see, I couldn't get it out of the door, but I made sure to put it in between the door. So hopefully it picks up that part of the door right here. Let's find out. Make sure when you're doing this, you surround the item totally at the top. There we go. Let's see what it does for us. That is close enough. No one's going to notice that difference. So there we go. We have now removed all of that. Now let's get on to exporting these things. All right, here we are in Kula, and I'm here in the basic edition of Kula. I go back and forth whether I like the advanced more or the basic. The advanced gives you a few more features which are nice, but it just depends on if you really want to pay for it. And I wanted to do this in the basic version, so anyone starting this from scratch can do this for basic free. I'm not going to teach you how to sign up with Kula, but man, I just keep knocking this thing by accident. I'm not going to teach you how to sign up with Kula, but I am going to show you how to go ahead and get into it and create a tour with Kula. So this is your main homepage whenever you first log on, and we're going to start going to it. You want to go to upload and create tour, not single image, create tour. Whenever you do your create tour, we're going to name this the address, just like that. And the description, I always put the town and state. Now, agents can send me a different description if they would like, and I will do that, but that's just what I put naturally for everything. We're gonna come over here to these images we did earlier, and this drag right on into here. And while this is uploading, because I have abnormally slow internet compared to most people, I'm going to remind you to like, subscribe, all that jazz. Check out the merch down below. Go to my website, order some prints. I got lots of stuff going on. Maybe join the membership program. And if you don't want to do any of that, then just wait just 1 minute and I'll be back when this is done uploading. All right, here we are, and everything's been loaded up to Kula. Now, one thing that you can do, which is advantageous and which I would recommend doing, is before you upload everything, to go ahead and rename all of your shots. So as you can see, I've renamed front exterior, front yard, entrance, living room 1, living room 2, so on and so forth, all the way out throughout the house, just to make it easier for people when they're viewing them in the tour. They'll know exactly what room is what. And if you're paying with the advanced version, this has some benefits later on. But just for the basic version, I still recommend doing it. And we're going to press post. And I know you haven't arranged anything yet, but just press post and go on to the next part. Trust me. Pressing post, here we go. And as you can see, this is why it was important to lay out your images the way we liked them earlier, so that way they're exactly like you want them in the tour. And remember earlier when I told you whenever taking these pictures to put the screen facing whatever direction you want the initial view to be? This is where that really comes in handy, because as these load up, I shouldn't have to change the view at all. There is a way to change the view, and I'll show you how to do that. But see, this is exactly where I want it looking when it first opens up. This is perfect. See this reticle right here? You can also see the heading degree over here. This in the center is exactly where people will be looking as soon as they click on this picture. So if you want them looking more like this, click this, drag this over, and there you go. They can now see the whole front yard. Now, I would recommend whenever you move this reticle, you can move it wherever you want, but just make sure you come over here to the Y axis and always change it to 0, because that means the verticals will be straight as possible whenever looking at this view. Now, I'm just going to go in here. After you make any changes, you have to press the save button before you go on to the next task. This is where you can change the description and all kinds of fun little things, but we're not doing any of that because we already did all that to begin with. We're going to save and we're going to go on to the next shot. And here we go. Let's level this up a little more like we want it right there. Here we go. Now, whenever people open it up, it'll be looking just like that. Save, on to the next shot. That is pretty much exactly where we want it to be. So we're not even going to save just like the before. Actually, we want it to be looking a little more like this. So here we go, still at 0. Remember, every time you make a change, press the save button before moving on to the next one. That one is, let's see, actually, I think I want them facing this way. So what we're going to do is grab this and just move it on along, because I want them looking just like this whenever they walk into this room, so they know where they've come from. Once again, on 0 and save. On to the next one. Perfect, just like that. and on to the next one. Want it a little bit further over so you can see everything just like that. 0, save. See how quick this process is once you get it in here. And this is why I like Kula so much. It's because this process in particular is very easy. Here we go. Perfect, perfect. Into the primary bedroom. I want it looking more like right there. So here we go. Center of the room there. Save. Here we go. That's perfect. Perfect. As you can see, we got rid of our stuff earlier, and this is where it's coming in handy because you don't have to see any of those. There we go. And this one, I want more like right there. There we go. Save. Next one. Over a little bit like that. Save. Garage. We want it to be nice and level like that. Right there. Save. Onto the rear exteriors. Perfect. Perfect. And perfect. Just like that, we've gone through the whole tour. We've rearranged everything. Save one last time just to make sure. And now we're going to press the close button. But Jeremy, we haven't shared it or anything yet. Trust me, just press the close button right up here and close again. Now you're going to come back to this tour, and this shows you all the images just like this. They all look beautiful, all look perfect. Here we go. And what we're going to do is come on over to feed. Just like this. Sorry, we're going to press these 3 buttons over here and go to my tours, not feed. And here you can see all of your tours. Now you'll notice whenever you see these that they are a little bit bright, and that's just from my experience. That's what agents prefer. They prefer these things to be brighter than darker. So if they look a little bit overexposed, that usually works out for your benefit. And that's why mine look a tiny bit overexposed, because that's how my agents like it. All you have to do is go over here and press the share button. Get link or embed code, and right down over here is where you get your code to share these things. Now, if you want to see this tour in particular that I just worked on, so you can see exactly what these images look like, you can check the link below. Now, the link below is also going to be the full tour for this property, so this could give you a good random rough visualization of what I actually deliver to clients and what they typically order from me, because this has got photos, it's got virtual staging, it's got drone, it's got a regular video, it's got an agent interview video, and now it has 360 tour. As always, keep rocking and rolling, enjoy what you're doing, make smart business decisions, and let me know how you like this camera and how you like Kula and the integration between the two, because I think it's super simple. If you want to see the last video I did on how to do a video walkthrough with the Insta360 camera, you can check that out over here. Or if you want to see just my general thoughts about this camera in particular, check it out over here. Keep rocking and rolling, and I will catch you next time.